It was a summer afternoon when Lucas and Jake first met. Nothing special happened that day, at least not for the other people in the neighborhood. But for them, everything was about to change. They were only 7 years old, but the feeling they had was like they'd known each other for entire lifetimes. When they saw each other for the first time, it was like fate whispered in their ears, as if something beyond human comprehension was going on. Their parents tried calling their attention, saying it was time to go home, but neither of them wanted to separate. Nothing could pull them apart at that moment. They talked non-stop, laughed at everything, and somehow they were sharing something way bigger than just words. Right there, in those hours, they began to discover each other, and the connection they formed was instant. Time didn't matter anymore. The only thing that mattered was being around someone who made them feel so whole. From that moment on, their destinies were intertwined, something they didn't know yet, but felt in every look they exchanged. They became inseparable. They weren't just friends, they were brothers. Over the years, that friendship only grew. They stayed up late, racing each other, exploring every corner of the city, and even their parents, who were so close, soon became best friends too. But what no one knew was that this was just the beginning. What seemed like a regular friendship was about to turn into something way deeper, something that would mess with the laws of the universe and change the course of their lives forever. But fate seemed to have its own plans for them. That autumn afternoon, something happened. They were at Jake's house, playing like always, when an odd feeling took over the place. It was like the air changed, like the world paused for a second, and both of them felt it. They looked at each other without saying a word, but they knew something big was about to happen. Something that could change everything. Almost instinctively, they ran to the front door and stepped outside into the yard. The sky was cloudy, but when they looked up, what they saw made their hearts stop for a second. A huge ball of energy, glowing bright, was heading straight for the city. They stood there, speechless, watching it, knowing danger was near but not fully understanding what was going on. The world seemed like it was about to flip upside down. Soon, the neighbors started coming out of their houses, looking up at the sky, watching the phenomenon. But something strange happened. Something that made Lucas and Jake stand out even more. Their eyes glowed with a white intensity, like something deep inside them was waking up. Without thinking, they stretched their hands towards the energy ball, and what happened next was something neither of them could even comprehend. A powerful explosion burst in the sky, a force so strong that everyone on the street stepped back, stunned by what they'd just seen. That energy ball that was coming to destroy was now gone, destroyed by an even stronger force. And as the two boys looked at each other, they realized that wasn't something they had planned. They didn't know how, but it felt like they'd done that before. The feeling was like that power had always been there, waiting to be unleashed. As the sky calmed down, silence took over the place. Lucas and Jake stood there in shock, not understanding what had just happened. They couldn't believe what their eyes had just witnessed, nor what they had just done. It was like the universe had made a mark on their souls, connecting them to something way bigger than they could imagine. And in that moment, something in their hearts told them that this wasn't an isolated event. They were about to discover something much bigger. Jake's grandfather, a wise man who always spoke about things that seemed unreal, appeared beside them. He looked them both in the eyes and said, with an unusual seriousness, "You need to go to the School of Magic. There, you'll learn the true meaning of this power, understand what really happened, and learn how to control it." Lucas and Jake exchanged looks, speechless, but they knew the next step was already laid out for them. They had been chosen for something much bigger than just childhood friends. Destiny was calling, and they couldn't run away from it. What comes next, no one knew. But the journey was about to begin. The next day, Lucas and Jake's lives would never be the same. They woke up with a strange feeling, like the world around them was changing. Something inside them seemed to pulse, something they couldn't see but could feel. Jake's grandfather had warned them about what was to come, but no one could have prepared them for the truth they were about to discover. Breakfast was tense. Their parents tried to act normal, but the tension in the air was palpable. Lucas and Jake sat in silence, both of them with thoughts racing through their minds, trying to make sense of what had just happened and what it meant for them. They could barely look at each other, like they were afraid of what they might see in their friend's eyes. They didn't know if it was fear of the unknown or the sense that they were on the edge of a big change. But then that silence was broken by a knock on the door. Jake's grandfather, with his grave expression, appeared, like he already knew the waiting was over. Without a word, he handed them an old map, with inscriptions that looked like they had been written by hand in golden ink, shining in the morning light. This map will guide you to the School of Magic. But before you leave, there's something you need to understand. The power you've awakened is no simple thing. It was created by forces much older than any of us. There's a destiny waiting for you, and that destiny will require you to make tough choices. The grandfather looked deeply into their eyes, like he was seeing something they couldn't. Lucas and Jake exchanged looks, feeling the weight of his words. They knew something much bigger was at stake, but the idea of having to choose between saving the world and losing those they loved seemed impossible. But curiosity and the need to understand what was going on pushed them forward. They couldn't just ignore the signs. "Let's go," Jake said, breaking the silence and grabbing the map from his grandfather's hands. "We gotta figure out what all this means." They set off on their journey without looking back. The town they knew was fading behind them, and as they got further away, the weight of the unknown became stronger. The road to the magic school would take them to a place where the laws of nature and magic intertwined, where their destinies would be tested in ways they couldn't imagine. The trip was long and full of obstacles. But what surprised them the most was how the power inside them began to show up in unexpected ways. One night, while they were camping near a dense forest, a dark shadow appeared, creeping through the darkness. It was a creature, something Lucas and Jake had never seen before, with bright eyes that reflected the light of the stars. Without thinking, Lucas raised his hand almost instinctively. When he did, a wave of energy shot out from his fingers, lighting up the forest with a bright light. The creature was pushed back, disappearing into the shadows. Jake looked at him, surprised and not sure what to do, but Lucas just shook his head like he'd seen this somewhere before. "This is not normal," Jake said, still in disbelief over what they'd just witnessed. Lucas looked at the horizon, where the stars seemed to shine brighter than ever, and whispered, "The power we've awakened. It's stronger than we thought." That small encounter with the creature was a reminder that the journey was far from easy. But it was also a sign that they were on the right path. Whatever this destiny was that awaited them, they were ready to face it together. The magic school still felt so far away, but the power inside them was guiding them, and now there was no turning back. With every step they took, the mystery deepened. Something big was about to happen, and Lucas and Jake were ready to face whatever challenges came next. They were more than just friends now, more than brothers. They were guardians, and their fate was tied to something much bigger. What awaited them at the magic school? They didn't know yet, but they could feel that the secret of the universe was within their reach. And as they moved toward the unknown, one thing was certain. This journey would change them forever. The journey of Lucas and Jake led them to a place where time seemed to lose all meaning. With every step, the world around them grew more surreal, like the boundaries between the real and the magical were fading. The map Jake's grandfather had given them guided them precisely, but it also seemed to have its own power, like it knew exactly where they needed to be at every moment. Finally, after days of traveling non-stop, an imposing figure appeared in front of them. A huge stone door, covered in arcane symbols, seemed to materialize out of nowhere, like it had been waiting for them. It was the entrance to the magic school, but before they could take a step forward, a hooded figure appeared, blocking the way. It was a guardian, someone meant to protect the place from intruders. "Are you ready for what you'll find here?" The guardian's voice boomed like thunder, deep and full of authority. The magic school isn't just a place of learning, but also of trials. Only the true chosen ones can enter. Lucas looked at Jake, a little nervous but determined. "We're here because we have to be. Whatever this destiny is we're fulfilling, we're ready." The guardian looked at them with piercing eyes, like he was reading their souls. He nodded his head, seemingly satisfied with their answer. "Very well then. The test begins now." He raised his hands, and the air around them filled with a vibrating energy. Suddenly, Lucas and Jake were surrounded by fragmented images of their own lives, moments they had forgotten, or that had been buried deep in their memories. They saw themselves as kids running through fields, laughing without a care. Family trips, farewells, and even moments of pain. But there was something more, an inexplicable connection, something that bound them together more than just friendship. "You're seeing now what connects you," the guardian said in a grave tone. "It's not just about magic or power, but something older. Something you've both already carried inside of you. What you saw just now is the bond that ties you together, the true essence of your journey." The images disappeared as fast as they appeared, leaving Lucas and Jake stunned. They were in shock, not knowing what to think or say. But there was one thing clear: the bond they shared was way deeper than they ever thought. The Guardian watched them in silence, and then, slowly, the stone door started to open, revealing the inside of the school. "Go ahead. You've got a lot to learn, and the fate of many depends on you." Without another word, Lucas and Jake moved forward, hearts heavy, but with a new understanding of what was coming. They were ready to face the unknown, knowing the power they'd unlocked was just a fraction of what they'd need to master. As they entered the school, a wave of magical energy surrounded them, like they were crossing an invisible barrier. They were finally inside, but what would they find there? They knew they were about to face challenges that would test not only their magical abilities but their courage, loyalty, and even their limits. The magic school wasn't just a place to learn. It was a battlefield, a sacred ground where the most powerful mages and warriors had fought and sacrificed for centuries. Lucas and Jake were about to find out that their destinies weren't just about what happened to them, but about the impact they'd have on the world around them. Now more than ever, the real journey was about to begin. And no matter what they found, they knew they could face anything together. The day seemed ordinary at the magic school, but Lucas and Jake couldn't ignore the weird feeling surrounding them. With every spell they tried, something was happening. The magic flowed more intensely, more directly, as if the air around them was vibrating with something unknown, something familiar. They were starting to realize that something much bigger was unfolding right in front of their eyes. It wasn't just about learning magic, something way deeper was at stake. As they walked through the school halls, the words of the wise ones still echoed in their minds. "You have the power to change fate, but fate was already written." What did that even mean? How could something already be decided for them but still have the power to change? There were so many questions, but the answers still seemed far off. That afternoon, as they trained in one of the school's big combat rooms, a sense of urgency filled the air. The energy around them felt thicker, more threatening. Suddenly, an intense vibration made them turn to the horizon through the window. The sky was tinged with red, and a huge presence seemed to be approaching, something they couldn't ignore. "It's him," Lucas said, his voice barely a whisper. Jake, his eyes locked on the scene, felt a surge of adrenaline shoot down his spine. They knew the moment had come. The being from the other planet, the villain who'd started his journey of destruction, was about to arrive. Without another word, they both ran to the school's central square, where the tension was thick in the air. The combat master, one of the school's most experienced, looked at them with concern. "This won't be an easy battle. You ready?" "We're ready," Jake replied, his voice firm. He felt a strength inside him, like he was preparing for something he already knew how to do. Lucas beside him felt the same. There was an invisible bond between them, something much deeper than just friendship. They were ready. The sky opened up, and a massive ship appeared, with energy so powerful it felt like it had been ripped straight out of a nightmare. The being from the other planet was here, and with him, a horde of warriors and powerful creatures. The battle was about to begin. However, something was happening. Lucas and Jake's eyes began to glow with a white intensity, and powerful energy started to concentrate in their hands. Without knowing how, a ball of energy formed in front of them, way stronger than any spell they'd tried before. The battlefield seemed to distort, and the intensity of the energy they were emitting made even the villain's warriors hesitate. This can't be happening," Jake muttered, shocked by the power coming from his body. Lucas was just as stunned, but the connection between them seemed stronger than any doubt or fear. The ball of energy now floating between them was like a contained explosion, ready to devastate everything around them. The wise one, watching from afar, realized what was happening. "It's the awakening," he murmured to himself. "They don't know yet, but they're the heirs of the ancient guardian's power. Their fate has already been sealed." The villain, seeing the power the two had awakened, grinned maliciously. "I knew something like this would happen," he said as his ship started gearing up for an attack mortal. "But that won't be enough to stop the destruction that's coming. Earth will be destroyed and you can't stop it." But the moment he finished speaking, the energy ball in Lucas and Jake's hands exploded with such devastating force that it lit up the entire sky, creating a shockwave that made the villain retreat. "You don't understand what you're about to face," he said as his ship moved away. "But in the end you'll all fall. The real power is somewhere else, in something you still don't understand." Lucas and Jake stood frozen, staring at each other. They knew something huge was coming. The power they'd unleashed was just the beginning, and the truth was starting to unfold. They weren't just two regular young guys. No, they were way more than that. And everything they'd done so far was just the prelude to what was yet to come. As the battle settled down, the wise one approached them, his eyes glowing with wisdom and respect. "You've awakened," he said calmly. "But there's still much to learn. Your true journey is just beginning." With their hearts pounding and the sky still echoing with the blast reverberations, Lucas and Jake looked toward the future. Something massive was at stake, and now they knew their lives had changed forever. They were the Guardians. They were the last protectors of Earth. What was coming next? Only fate could tell, but one thing was for sure. They were ready to face whatever came, no matter how impossible it seemed. The battle had reached its peak, and the air was thick with tension. The two friends, Lucas and Jake, were facing off against the mysterious being from another planet, hell-bent on destroying Earth. Their hands were glowing with energy, pulsating with immense power. The ground shook with every hit, and the sky, once clear, was now filled with black clouds, as if the universe itself was witnessing the fight for the planet's survival. Lucas felt something different. The energy flowing through his veins wasn't like anything he'd ever felt before. He and Jake were more connected than ever, and that made them stronger with every move. Every action felt like a dance of pure magic and power. Around them, the allies they'd made at the School of Magic were fighting too, but their struggles seemed to have a different intensity. It was like, alongside Lucas and Jake, everyone was being guided by something much bigger. Something ancient. That's when the final explosion happened. The being from the other planet, furious, launched a devastating attack, a blast of energy that could wipe out everything. But Lucas and Jake didn't hesitate. Together, they raised their hands, their energies merging into a power so strong that the Earth itself seemed to tremble with the force of the blow. They created a sphere of light so bright it blinded even the bravest at the front lines. With a shout of pure strength, they launched the energy at the enemy. The explosion was massive, like the sound of 1,000 thunderclaps colliding in the sky. The enemy was thrown back, their power dissipating as quickly as it had appeared. But the impact of the battle wasn't just physical. Something deeper was happening. When the enemy fell, Lucas and Jake felt a sudden wave of memories flooding in. They looked at each other, eyes wide, as images of past lives, epic battles, flashed through their minds. They weren't just the young wizards who'd entered the school. They were more. Way more. The connection they felt wasn't just friendship. It was something eternal, something carved into the fabric of time. That's when the old wise man, Jake's grandfather, appeared. He looked at them with a peaceful smile, as if he'd been waiting for that moment. "You're the Guardians," he said, his voice full of wisdom and respect. "The ones who protected Earth before, and now you've returned. Your fight never ended, it's just begun." His words echoed in their minds, and the truth finally hit them with crushing weight. Lucas looked at Jake, their eyes now more understanding, stronger. They had figured out who they really were. And with that discovery, they knew the fight wasn't over. They couldn't just walk away now because Earth's fate was in their hands. They were the Guardians, and they weren't going to let the darkness return. The battle had been intense, and Lucas and Jake were exhausted. But in that moment, with their eyes shining with unexplainable light, they understood. The energy they had used, the strength they had channeled, didn't come from now. They were reincarnating the ancient Guardians of Earth. They remembered their past lives, the sacrifices made to protect the world. The wise man's words echoed in their minds, and a wave of understanding filled their hearts. They weren't alone anymore. They were part of something much bigger. When the being from another planet was finally defeated, a mix of victory, relief, and pain washed over them. Earth was saved, but their journey wasn't over. They had awakened something inside themselves they could never forget. They were the heroes, the guardians of humanity, destined to protect Earth from even greater forces that were coming. And more importantly, they knew that with their powers united, there were no limits to what they could achieve. But what about you? What would you do in their place? Do you think, upon discovering your true destiny, you'd have the courage to face the battle? Where do you think your strength comes from? What sacrifice would you be willing to make for humanity? If you like this story, don't forget to leave a comment, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more stories like this. See you in the next video.